Welcome back to another solo episode of Difficult Dish, a podcast about different South Asian narratives. I am Mohuya, your fellow co-host. Today it's just me, okay? Hope that's okay. It's been a while since I've done a little solo episode because, we do it on and off, Mashun, and then I go, and we do it like every 2 weeks-ish. So it's been a little bit since I've talked to the camera and done a little solo one. Before we get started, I still want to say that everything happening in Bangladesh is still ongoing, regardless of the fact that the higher Supreme Court announced that quotas are actually not legal. Student protests are still going on. They're still getting killed. Administration is still treating them very horribly. And I just want to let you know that even though that bill got passed, and the quota system is now reduced from like 56% of jobs being given to minorities, children of freedom fighters and things like that, it is now like 7%, which is a huge win. Protests are still going on and they're still being treated horribly. So in honor of that, I'm wearing my hand-painted pants that I designed a few years ago. It just says disruptive to the youth. If you guys are watching on video right now, there's like a Bangla section that you probably can't see since I'm like sitting down, but I made this years ago to kind of say that the youth is seen as disrespectful sometimes, or that we revolt sometimes, and that's seen as like a bad thing. But also it's important to like stand up for what's right and question authority sometimes, because Bangladesh is built on student protests. It is built on just us like fighting for our rights. So it's sad that it's kind of going backwards now. But just remember that if you are feeling lost, and if you are in Bangladesh listening to this and you just don't know when the bright light is going to come through, the truth will always prevail and there will be justice soon. Okay? As always, I got my Alani drink to give me some energy for today's episode. But before we get started, let me know in the comments below, how are we doing? Let's do a little mental well-being check-in, because the past few months have been pretty hard for me. But I think I am seeing the brighter light coming out. I'm supposed to be moving out soon and getting a new place in the next few months, because I've just like outgrown this place and there have been a lot of like apartment problems. If you guys are staying tuned with my YouTube videos, I like mention everything in that, and I'm just like excited for a new change. I'm also traveling soon with one of my besties, and I'm just really excited to like relax for a little bit, for a few days, not even a long extended period of time. But it's been a while since I've like actually taken a break and chilled out. I'm always on go mode. So I think that's what's been like contributing to my burnout and my stress and anxiety and things like that. My birthday month is also coming through. Leos unite. I'm turning 26, and I'm pretty sure that still counts as mid-20s. I guess 27 is when you're in the late 20s. So I'm really trying to like savor that. But since I am getting older and it's just like another thing that I have to worry about, to plan a birthday, it just brings me stress. I used to love my birthdays back in the day, and I still do, but I just get more and more tired with planning it and just less excited with planning it. So if you guys have any birthday ideas that are extra-ish for Leos, let me know in the comments below. Because even though I'm like not trying to plan it and I'm anxious about it, I obviously still want to do something fun and eccentric, So today in this episode, I wanted to talk about drinking and how not drinking has changed my life, okay? And before we get started, I just want to give a disclaimer. I'm not hating on anyone that does drink. You can do that as much as you want, as little as you want. You can do that for fun. It's your life at the end of the day, right? And I'm not better than you just because I don't drink anymore. But I want to make this episode to show you how not drinking anymore has changed my life, how I stopped drinking. And also, if you are looking for motivation to stop drinking, then this is for you, okay? Because I know, especially in America, drinking culture is very heavy and it's like a part of everything. Like if you go outside, you're expected to have a drink in your hand. If you're a part of like a corporate job, you're expected to go out to, happy hour and get drinks with your friends or your coworkers. And that's how you mingle and like make friends in the office. So drinking is a very big part of our culture. And I don't think people realize just how ingrained it is in our brains. And because of that, if you do choose to not drink or you don't want to drink anymore, sometimes you are shunned, sometimes you are like looked at in a weird or bad way. So hopefully this like gives you some inspiration on how you can slowly stop drinking, or just what the other side of like not drinking life is like, you know? So a little bit about me. I stopped drinking a couple of years ago, like in my early 20s really. And, you know, someone that is born and raised in New York, someone who grew up in the US, again, drinking is very heavy in our like American culture, I guess. Especially if you're in high school and college, it was cool to drink, right? But I never really liked it. I feel like I only did it to fit in and look cool in front of my friends. Also, it's like a coping mechanism if you are going through something. Your first instinct is to grab a drink. And so since it was so ingrained in me, I just kept doing it. Also because of the community I was in, the friends that were surrounding me, I just felt bad to not do it because I feel like I just wouldn't have friends anymore, which is such a bad like way of thinking about it. But anyway, I cold turkey stopped drinking a couple of years ago, and I have not thought about it since. You know, I feel like my life is so much better, and I can just think more clearly, and I can live a more like fruitful life. Obviously, I'm not going to say that it like completely changed my life forever, because there are obviously so many amazing functioning human beings that do drink once in a while, and I'm not talking about that, but this is just like my personal experience. So let's get started. As always, make sure to listen or watch till the end of the episode so you can comment the emoji of the week, and also make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching YouTube videos, and rate and review if you are listening to it on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to, because it helps us so much as like a smallish podcast. So let's talk about first how I stopped drinking, okay? The first thing I stopped doing was going to bars or clubs to catch up with friends. I feel like that was always my go-to place to hang out with anyone. There was never a wholesome activity that didn't involve drinking. The go-to option was always to go to a bar or a club. And obviously you can go to those places and not drink. Like now I'm able to go to those places for birthdays or, you know, things with friends and not drink, and that's fine. But in the beginning, when I was still technically drinking, it was like expected to get a margarita or get like a drink in your hand, right? And I'm not even talking about getting drunk every single day, but just having a drink in your hand was common. And that's like the source of opening up to your friends or being vulnerable, or just having something to refer to if you're feeling awkward, like you just have a drink in your hand. So once I stopped going to those places to meet up with friends, that's when it got so much easier for me, because it removed like all of those factors around me that made it feel like it was normal for me to have a drink, right? Once I started meeting friends in different areas, like, you know, maybe like a painting class or maybe a coffee shop, it was abnormal to have a drink there, obviously, because those places usually don't have like wine or, you know, whatever else alcohol. So that just like eliminated all like drinking options for me. And I really liked that because I found my true friends from that scenario, you know? All right, another thing that like is such a big game changer. We kind of talked about this in our confidence episode, where we gave you tips on just how to be more confident, the language you should choose when you are talking about yourself and others and things like that. So another thing that helped me to stop drinking was when someone asked me if I wanted to drink or if I do drink, I would automatically say I don't drink instead of saying I'm trying to stop drinking. Because I feel like when you are saying I'm trying to do something, it makes you feel less confident, and it makes you feel like you are going to go back and drink or whatever else it is that you're trying to stop. But when you're completely wholeheartedly adopting the fact that you're not a drinker, it makes you feel like you really are not, and that that's not your identity anymore. And also I feel like when I was saying I'm not drinking anymore or I'm trying to stop drinking, it like invited questions, and people were like upset for me. People just like had assumptions in their head where they thought I was like an alcoholic or a religious purpose or whatever it was. So they would either feel sorry for me, which is odd, which also shows you that like drinking culture is so ingrained in us where people feel bad for you if you don't drink, or they would feel like I had to answer all these questions, or I had to feel like actually that I had to answer all of these questions to kind of make myself look better. Like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not an alcoholic. I never was. It's just like, you know, I don't drink for this purpose or this purpose. And I didn't want it to be like a whole conversation. It should be just okay that I don't drink anymore. and that should be the end of the conversation. Obviously with like my close friends and my friends, like I'll talk to you about it, but if it's like a random person, I'm not gonna just open up randomly of like why I don't drink. That should be it, and you should respect that. If that person doesn't respect it, that's on them, and you shouldn't even be like talking to them, right? So just like the language you use when you are trying to stop something, or when you did stop something, is very important, and it like really changes the whole wiring of your brain and your actual intention with stopping something. So another thing that helped me stop drinking was I reduced the friends that would make me feel bad for not drinking, and who would call me not fun for not drinking, or who would only hang out at bars or clubs every Friday or Saturday night. After I reduced that, I didn't reduce those friendships just because they made me feel bad for drinking, but you realize how intertwined everything is, that like if they made you feel bad for this one thing, they probably would have made you feel bad for something else, and they did, right? So after I changed the people around me and I got friends that accepted me for who I am and embraced that, and we went to other places beyond just clubs and bars, that's when I felt like it was normal for me to just like not be a drinker or have a drink in my hand to open up. And it's just such a crazy feeling, because when you do change the people around you and you change your environment, your whole like way of thinking completely transforms. You will feel like you can finally breathe properly, and you can finally accomplish the things that you want to do, right? Like even when I moved out and I came closer to Manhattan and I found more like creative people around me, it made me feel not stupid for having like the big dreams that I had to pursue like a creative path, or do something that's kind of untraditional. Whereas if I stayed in the suburbs where I grew up, I would have still felt like I had only like 3 options that I could go into for careers, and it was just like doctor, lawyer, engineer, like that type of field, right? So it's very interesting and honestly very crazy how big of a difference it makes when you like change your environment. Another thing that helped a lot, that I feel like is a lot more accessible nowadays, because there are like less drinkers or more people that don't want like as many like sugary drinks. There are so many more mocktail options, like virgin mocktail options, or like soda options. It really wasn't a thing when I was stopping. Obviously it was a thing, but it wasn't as popular. I feel like now there are whole businesses that just thrive off of being probiotics or just virgin mocktails, right? Whereas before it was cooler to drink and have those things, but now there are drinks that are literally just like water or juice that look like a beer can, so it's very nice to see that that's like becoming more trendy now, even though obviously it should have been a norm. But yeah, substituting the alcoholic drinks that I would have in my hand with just like a soda or a mocktail or a juice or whatever it is, just makes it so much easier. Because obviously sometimes if you are going into a new environment and you don't really know anyone there, it is kind of a crutch to have like a drink in your hand. You can sip it if you're feeling anxious or nervous. I get that completely. Sometimes you need, or you feel like you need it to like take the edge off. But if you have another drink in your hand that isn't alcoholic, but you can still kind of use that as like a defense mechanism, that helps a lot as well. So I just refer to those type of drinks when I am feeling kind of anxious, and sometimes I sip it so much to the point where it's like done within seconds. So something else that really helped me stop drinking was just realizing how bad, first of all, alcohol tastes. I was like, why am I drinking it if it tastes so bad? Like, it made me do some inner work thinking where I was like, okay, I'm only drinking it to probably hide from a feeling or something, or because I think I look cool. But at the end of the day, it tastes so bad. So why am I putting myself through this? And also, second, I hated the after effects of it. Like, the feelings of having a hangover, or the feelings of being post drunk. Like, you can't even have coherent thoughts, and your head is spinning when you're trying to sleep. You're constantly trying to like throw up, and there's just like a bad feeling with it. There's only like a 10-minute feeling of like euphoria, really. That's what it feels like. So with that in my mind, that's what made me stop drinking, because I just constantly remembered those feelings. So by constantly reminding myself of those feelings, I was just so turned off by the idea of drinking. And I was just like, why would I put myself through that, And let me tell you, when I cold turkey stopped drinking, right, Obviously, it was hard because, again, I live in America. I have friends that drink, and sometimes it feels weird to not also participate in that act, right? But as time went on, it became so normalized to me that I didn't mind not drinking anymore. I didn't mind my friends doing it around me. And it was just like not even brought up anymore. And that's the point of it, because like through this hardish process, if you were like a drinker before, you'll find people that accept you for who you truly are. And it doesn't become like a big thing anymore. It just becomes life. So here are some of the things that has changed after I stopped drinking. Some of the things are going to be obvious, but some of these things are like more personal to me. So the first thing is that it forced me to do some inner work thinking and learn about myself and be interesting, because as I mentioned before, sometimes when you have a drink in your hand, you're kind of depending on that to be interesting or be vulnerable or open up to someone, and it's kind of a crutch, right? But after I removed that completely from my life, I was like, okay, how can I just be fun and interesting without having something to depend on? And that took a lot of like, self-reflection and like a shift in my mentality and things like that. But I just realized that I like who I am without a drink. And if someone doesn't like that, that's fine. I don't have to talk to them. But why should I like hide from my own personality and like my own identity when I feel like I have value to give without a drink, So it was very hard in the beginning, because again, me and so many other people sometimes use a drink to just like loosen up, and they just heavily depend on that to not be as anxious anymore when they're talking to someone. And so when you do remove that and you're in your like 20s, you just feel like, oh my God, who am I without that, right? Especially if you've been having it for so many years. So it was definitely a work in progress, and it took a couple of months or even years. But like here I am now, comfortable and confident without it. So the next thing that completely changed when I stopped was that it shifted my coping mechanisms, and it made me completely think differently about how I take out my anger or how I react when I'm sad. Because again, if you are dependent on a drink, and by the way, I'm not talking about like alcoholics or something more serious, right? I'm talking about if you just went out to get a drink once in a while. So if you did go out once in a while to get a drink when you were feeling like heartbroken, right? Or if you were feeling sad or angry, you're like, okay, let me just go out and get a drink, or go out with the girls, or just drink at home by myself, right? Whatever it is. Sometimes you depend on that to reduce the feelings that you have inside, and it's like a defense mechanism. And when you eliminate that completely, you realize like, damn, I really have to sit down and think about these feelings in a way that is very uncomfortable, but a lot healthier, right? So it really forced me to think about when I did resort to alcohol, and it forced me to actually like be vulnerable with myself, which was so scary, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. But I also think it's very important, especially as you get older and older, to like have a healthy way of taking out your emotions, instead of like trauma dumping on a loved one, or just like using alcohol to get rid of it, because it just makes you more mature, I guess, emotionally mature. The next change I had once I stopped drinking was my physical health. Okay, I felt so much better health-wise, like you will not believe it. My skin was clearer. I didn't feel as bloated constantly, because there is so much sugar in alcohol. I'm sure you guys know that, obviously, but if you have multiple drinks, even if it is like every weekend or every other week, it makes a very big difference on your body and how you feel, right? So it changed how tired I feel and how sluggish I feel. Obviously, I felt more productive because I didn't wake up on like Saturdays or Sundays with like the hangover feeling. And it just made me feel a lot more energetic and youthful. And I didn't even realize that when I did drink back in the day, since it was such a normal thing for me, I didn't realize that I was having such horrible after effects, because again, everyone around me was doing it. I was doing it constantly, so I didn't really have a chance to even feel how I was when I had good health, just like the little micro things make such a big difference in like your whole overall health and I really like took it for granted when I was younger. Like especially brunch with the girls. Obviously brunch with the girls is so much fun. I used to do that all the time. But brunch with the girlies, the mimosas with the sugar and the fun drinks with the margaritas and this and that. I don't even know what it is anymore. Like I have not looked at like an alcoholic menu in a while, but that has a lot of sugar in it. Yeah, it gets you wasted quick, but also it has a lot in it, you know, and it's not good for your skin. It's not good for your body, especially if you're doing it constantly. So I needed to stop like soon, you know. The next thing that has changed for me once I stopped, I mentioned this before, but it changed my whole self-confidence. I feel so much more confident now because I don't feel like I need to rely on a drink to open up or have a good time. I feel like a lot of people call you like a party pooper, or, you know, they assume that you can't be fun if you don't have a drink in your hand. But I feel like I can still party and have a good time and talk to people and be energetic. I just need my energy drink if it's late at night, and I'm good to open up. Like I don't need to have a drink, you know. And I think it's all a mental thing. A lot of people feel like they need a drink to be fun, and they need to take shots before they go to the club to have fun. And I get it. It does loosen you up in some extent. But I think once you force yourself to get out of that mindset and you actually do that inner thinking, you can have fun without that drink. You know, you just have to like feel like you can first, and then put in the effort to do it without that drink. So it's just like all a mental like discipline thing. The next thing that I also mentioned before is that now I have real friends that I can have substantial hangouts with, where it doesn't always involve drinking from, you know, my or their end, and they don't make fun of me for not drinking. It feels like we can have like substantial or wholesome conversations. We can go to different places to explore in Manhattan or wherever else, and it doesn't just revolve around like clubbing culture or like bar culture. It feels like I can actually be who I am without like hiding behind a facade. And you know, it's just really nice. Obviously when you are drinking, it again loosens you up and you feel like you can share more stuff and be vulnerable. But I also feel like sometimes if you get to the point where you're like wasted or you drink too much, you aren't like present, you forget a lot of things, you black out, you know, and it just defeats the whole purpose of the hangout because you don't really remember what's happening. You're kind of just like blurting out. I mean, it depends on what kind of drunk you are, what kind of drinker you are, but you're kind of just like blurting out random things, and it just gets messy sometimes. Again, if you do a lot, but if you do like a little bit in the beginning, that's fine, because, you know, who cares about that? But I like the present substantial moments, you know, and I think that's what really builds up a great friendship or a relationship in the beginning. The last thing that I want to talk about that has changed completely is that I save so much money. Oh my God, especially growing up in New York City, the drinks here, I mean, any city at this point, it feels like the drinks are so wild. Like an average drink in New York is at least like $16, right? And that's why there are so many people, before they go to the club or the bar, they pregame at home or somewhere else where they get like the small shot bottles for a cheaper price, and they just have that with their friends. But drinks here are crazy. That's why like people wait for happy hour, but even then happy hour is wild because you don't get just one drink, you get multiple drinks usually, and it's just a scam, it feels like, you know. So I've saved so much money by not drinking. I feel like honestly I've made when I make my what I spend in a week videos living in New York City on my YouTube channels, I talk about, or even how I save money in New York City videos, I talk about how if you spend money on drinking like every weekend, it adds up. Like Friday and Saturday, it's like at least $50 to $100, right? Depending on how many drinks you get. Yeah, it's been a big saving hack by not drinking. So anyway, that is my journey, my tips and tricks with not drinking. So if you guys are on the boat, or if you are trying to reduce it, let me know if this video was helpful or if this episode was helpful, because these are like my tricks from the past 2 years. It definitely is hard in the beginning, especially if like everyone around you is doing it and it's like normalized in your workspace or community. but it's also very possible if you are trying to stop. Again, I'm not better than you if I don't drink. I'm not better than you if I choose to spend my days in different ways. But I just wanted to make this for anyone that is like on the same journey wavelength as me, you know? But if you guys listen this far, make sure to comment a juice box emoji, because we are out here drinking our juices, our probiotic sodas, our water, so we can stay hydrated. Make sure to comment that on our Instagram or on our YouTube. But yeah, I love you guys so much. Make sure to follow us on our Instagram is @difficultish, our TikTok @difficultish podcast. My Instagram is @mohuya. But thank you so much for listening. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Allah Hafiz.